Hey y'all, it's Gabriel here, and today, now that we've talked about coming out in different situations, whether at school, work, your parents, your family, and whoever, now comes the question of, okay, so I came out to who I needed to come out to, now what do I do? And today we're going to cover like the next steps after coming out to people. Here's the time to really flesh out your plan about what you plan to do with your transition and what your transition requires, and basically what are the next steps for you now that you came out to whoever you needed to come out to. Transition is a very arbitrary word, and it could mean different things for different people, which is why it's a pretty subjective thing where people ask like, okay, so how do I transition? Because no one really is going to give you an all universal answer other than a very broad but vague answer of, I don't know, what do you think you require in your transition? Does it require hormones? Does it require surgery? Does it require legally changing your name? Does it require that you come out to everybody that you've ever interacted with in your daily life? Only to a select number of people. Now, I just want to reiterate that like transition doesn't necessarily mean you have to physically transition, even though most people tend to do in some way or another, depending on how they identify and what they feel like they need for their transition. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to physically change everything about yourself, or change, like take hormones and physically alter your appearance, or have any surgery done to like affirm your gender, you know, like bottom surgery, top surgery, or removing your reproductive organs inside your body, depending on what you were identified at birth and feeling dysphoric about that, or if it was medically necessary. No one's really gonna tell you, but I can give you some tips and like questions to ask yourself about like, what do you need to do from here? 1. What are your transition goals? This is a very broad question to ask people, but I feel like it really gets people going and give them an idea of how they're going to transition, what do they need for their transition, what the next steps are. And you kind of need to plan this as you go along with like coming out, or maybe shortly after coming out to people, because things do take time, especially if you plan to take hormones. It's unreasonable to think you get to go to a gender therapist or any therapist at all, and they're going to give you a referral to endocrinologist right after the first 3 sessions. While that does happen, that generally doesn't occur, and it could take months. So it's good to prepare yourself in advance, because things are not going to happen as quickly as you want them to, especially if you plan to get surgery or hormones or any of that. Especially not legally changing your name. That could take months depending on where you live. It varies by state, but I had my name change done a second time, and I got that filed, the petition, in November, and I just recently got the name change finalized because I had to go through so many hoops and everything, and also the court system was like a complete mess and total disorganized bureaucracy right there. So yeah, it's good to plan ahead and like have a fleshed out timeline so that you can get things moving along, even though it seems so far away. 2. Does your insurance cover these procedures? I just asked this because like, even though more insurance is starting to cover trans-related care, Medicaid in some states like New York City, it's still a work in progress, and transition is still a medically expensive process to go through. And I don't mean just getting the hormones and the surgery. There's also legal name change and like changing all your documents, which could basically run up your bill pretty heavily, especially in colleges that require a hefty fee just to change your name or like your gender on it, and even your birth certificate and all those restrictions that they place on it depending on where you live. 3. Do you have a certain timeline for all these changes? Like I said previously, it does take some time to get everything moving along, especially in the UK where there's like a waiting list, and unless you're going private, it could take months before you're even attended to or get your prescription for T, and even get the injections, and maybe like wait for top surgery, bottom surgery, hysterectomy, what have you. Like, it's gonna take some time, especially in the UK and even Canada even. And in the United States, it's really gonna depend on how much money you have, which is a good or bad thing. Like, you can go as fast as you want depending how much money you have, but also it's gonna be as slow as hell, because like some things are pretty much off limits, you know, like some people can't afford to get bottom surgery, and we're looking at like possibly like $80,000 plus like expenses like bills, because you're not going to be working for a long time, and also who's going to take care of you. You also have to be near the hospital, so you're going to have to stay outside of your comfort zone, you know, like let's say you live in New York City and you're going to get bottom surgery by Dr. Crane in California. You're gonna have to be there for a good while. So there's a lot of costs that really do add up, and it's good to plan ahead, especially as serious as transition, because it's very costly, it's also time consuming, it really gets in the way of life, and it could interfere with other plans that you may have, and it's also something that needs to be taken care of as quickly as possible and to maintain the dysphoria down as much as possible. If nothing else, you could always write out a to-do list of things that you need to do, like call clinics if you plan to go informed consent, call a list of gender therapists that are in network with your insurance so you can get started on getting whatever hormones you need, or start making consultations for surgeries that you might want in the future, because these do take time. People do have waiting lists, at least most of the surgeons do, for whatever gender affirming surgery that you might need. It's also good to check in with your friends who might be taking care of you during these surgeries, post-op recovery, so it could get fleshed out, because these things do take time, they do take planning, and other people need to be involved, because you can't be expected to do everything yourself unless you plan to pay somebody to take care of you, like an on-site nurse that might take care of you for the first 2 weeks post-op or anything. It's always good to write things down, especially when you're planning something as big as transition and you don't really know what you want. It's good to take the time to sit down, open a journal, write down what you need to do and how you need to get there, like a little roadmap, but it's written down on paper. In any case, that's really all I wanted to talk about today. And remember that things are subject to change, and nobody's transition is the same as any other person's, because we all go through different circumstances, have different situations happening when these things occur. So everybody's story is unique. Also, your transition needs and goals might change along the way. You never know. Some things you feel like you needed before, you might find that you might not need it anymore. For example, when I first started transitioning on T, I thought I would be needing bottom surgery because I felt like I would be very dysphoric down there once top surgery happens, and I'm finding that I have less and less need for it, maybe because of the bottom surgery results are not being where I would like them to be, and finding that it's not worth it for me, or that I don't need it. So now bottom surgery isn't really in my plans anymore, and hysterectomy changed from being totally necessary to being if I medically need it. Basically a matter of life death situation, would I get a hysterectomy, and in no other case would I have one. So with that little story, I just want to let you guys know that transition is unique for everybody, and also that have an open mind, because you never know what you first thought you needed in your transition might not be so important later down the road. Anyways, I hope this video helps. Please subscribe. I put out a video every Wednesday and Saturday, and I will see y'all real soon, okay?